All right. Well, today we are talking about Moses, the first part of Moses. Of course, the Moses story. Moses will continue talking about Moses. This is just part one of Moses, really. Um, the chapter title here is "I Am Who I Am." Uh, I am that I am. We'll talk about the translation of that in a moment. Um, But yeah, so I'm excited to be with you all. We are in the second book of the Bible. Up until now, we've just been in Genesis. So now we're finally in Exodus. So I want to start with a prayer. So let us pray. O God, whose wonderful deeds of old shine forth even to our own day, you once delivered by the power of your mighty arm your chosen people from slavery under Pharaoh, to be a sign for us of the salvation of all nations by the water of baptism. Grant that all the peoples of the earth may be numbered among the offspring of Abraham and rejoice in the inheritance of Israel through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So that prayer is from the Easter Vigil. A lot of the prayers we've been using are from the Easter Vigil, that central service the Saturday night before Easter. And the one rule, well, there are more than one rule, but one of the rules of the Easter Vigil is you must read the story of the Exodus. And this is the prayer that is paired with that. So this prayer is always prayed at the Easter Vigil, if you're doing it right, at least. So welcome. It's good to see everyone. It's really dark outside. It feels like it's 9 o'clock at night, but it's good to see you all. So today, chapter 5, I am who I am. It's the beginning of Exodus through the plagues, and we stop short of the Exodus itself. Exodus meaning the leaving, right? The exiting, the liberation. We stop short of that, and that will be for next week. God willing, we get through this chapter today. So here at the beginning of the lesson, I'm wondering if anything stuck out to you, if anything was surprising to you, or something you learned this week, something you want to share about Moses, or something that struck you as confusing, or whatever your reactions. Did you have any reactions to our reading this week? All right. Well, that's okay. This is a wonderful story. Just wonderful. So we begin here on page 53 of the Path. This is chapter 1 of Exodus. And we get a little introduction in italics that explains that Joseph and his descendants, the children of Jacob, the children of Israel, stay in Egypt after the famine, and they're given really good land, the land of Goshen. Given really great land, they prosper in Egypt. But of course, we know that's not where they're meant to stay. If we remember the promise of God to Abraham, part of that promise was a homeland. And in Egypt, they are not at home, right? They are they're resident aliens, right? They're on visas, right? Staying in Egypt for a time, and for a time meaning like multiple generations, right? There are some children of Israel who only know the life in Egypt, right? So they're staying there for some time. Eventually, of course, Jacob dies, Joseph dies, the Pharaoh who knew Joseph dies, and we read now a new king, a new Pharaoh, arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And this is a really consequential verse, right? Joseph's legacy in Pharaoh's court had protected the children of Israel. But eventually, there's a Pharaoh who didn't know Joseph, and probably didn't care. And he says to his people, look, the Israelites are more numerous and more powerful than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, or they will increase. And in the event of war, join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. So at this time in Egyptian history, they are worried about foreign interference, foreign adversaries warring against them, and they know the children of Israel come from the east, right? And so in the event of an invasion, an attack, will they join with those invaders? Are they even now conspiring to bring us down, right? There's a lot of fear here. Fear is motivating this reaction. So we read that the Egyptians became ruthless in imposing tasks on the Israelites, made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and in every kind of field labor. They were ruthless in all the tasks that they imposed on them. So the Israelites go from being these sort of free resident aliens to being forced laborers, in a sense, to being slaves, right? And notice here we're calling them Israelites. This is kind of a change, right? They are the Israelites, of course, after Jacob, Israel. So we have the slavery aspect. We're going to work them. We're going to put them in subjugation. We're going to oppress them. We're going to make them work in the fields. It is a note that just as a matter, when we think of Egypt, we obviously think of the pyramids. And more than likely, the Israelites would not have been involved in the building of the pyramids. The pyramids, as the tombs for the pharaohs, were, they probably would have seen the Israelites as too lowly to participate in the building of that, because they were foreigners. But they're engaged in certainly hard work. So we have slavery on one side, and then that's kind of the macro picture. And then micro, this sort of close-up picture, we see that they're also dealing with, they want to stop the spread of Israelites by killing the baby boy. So the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, says to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah. And notice, anytime someone's named, it's significant, right? Because if you name someone, you're remembering them. Their name has survived. And not everyone is named in the Bible. There are plenty of unnamed characters. Of course, we know that if you read the Bible, it's less common for women to be named. So here, these women they're important. They've been remembered, right? They are, and they're honored, right? Remember them, you honor them. As crucial to this central story. And as we'll say next week, the Exodus is the central story of Israelite salvation. It's the big story that they remember. So it's significant that they are remembered. And so Pharaoh tells them, look, when the Hebrew women, Israelite women, have babies, if it's male, just take it and kill it. But they disobey the Pharaoh. And Pharaoh confronts them. Why have you done this and allowed the boys to live? And they lie. The midwife said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them. so God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very strong. Here is an example of a virtuous lie. I don't know any other way to say that, but a virtuous lie. Um, why? Because they are lying to uh, protect the people of God, right? Lying to further the purposes of God. Now, don't go out and say that your priest told you you can lie. But it is an interesting ethical question about when is lying permitted. Bonhoeffer, I talk about Bonhoeffer all the time, but of course, Bonhoeffer, that German theologian, had been involved in a plot to kill Hitler. We're not really sure the extent to which he was involved, but he lies to the Nazis in the concentration camp, right? And he does that to protect people who were involved in the plot, who are not implicated, right? And so he, in his letters from prison, he deals with this question about the when is it virtuous to lie? When is it virtuous to tell a falsehood? Um, that said, the easy answer is don't lie unless you got a really good reason. But now y'all are going to tell everyone that I think lying's okay, and I did not say that. So then Pharaoh gives this order: every boy born to the Hebrews you shall throw into the Nile, but you shall let every girl live, right? Um, then, so that's the setting, right? That's the background. And then we get to Moses. We have a man from the house of Levi married a Levite woman. The house of Levi, of course, is a child of Israel, of Jacob. And the Levites will go on to be the priestly caste, right? They're the people who work in the temple. So she bears a child. And in this political environment, she gets a papyrus basket after hiding him for 3 months. She gets a papyrus basket and plasters it, makes a little boat and puts the child in it. And his sister, the child's sister, stands at a distance to see what will happen. They're really putting this child in the hands of God, right? Put him in the basket, see what happens. And his sister follows. His sister here is elsewhere identified as Miriam, the prophet Miriam, who will become very important in the next part in chapter 6. So the daughter of Pharaoh comes down to the river, and we know this story, right? The daughter of Pharaoh sees the basket. Oh, what is this? Oh, little baby boy. Miriam runs up and says, hey, would you like me to get you a wet nurse? And she says, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And so Moses' mother is actually able to nurse him. And she's paid for it. Not only does she get nursed, but she's paid for it. But when the child is weaned, brought to Pharaoh's daughter, she took him as her son, and she named him Moses, or Moshe, because I drew him out of the water. Moshe, Moses. So Moses is an Egyptian name, right? It's an unusual name if you're a Hebrew, right? Because it's Egyptian. And of course, now it sounds normal to our ears, but if we were speaking Hebrew and someone was telling us this story, Moses' name would sound funny. Yeah. So Moses grows up in Pharaoh's court. His life is one of a courtier. The Disney Pixar Prince of Egypt, right? Takes some creative liberties here, and you see Moses's life as a prince, fully integrated into Pharaoh's court, but all we know is he grows up in the court. But one day after he's grown up, and this is that Moses flees to Midian section on page 55. He sees the people and their forced labor, and he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsfolk. Now, we're not really sure how he knows it's his kinsfolk here, but he just does. He looks around and sees no one, and so he kills the Egyptian and hides him in the sand and thinks he's in the clear. The next day, he sees two Hebrews fighting. He's like, "Hey, y'all need to stop." And they say, "What are you gonna do? You're gonna kill us too, right?" So he knows he's been found out, and sure enough, Pharaoh hears of it, and Pharaoh seeks to kill Moses as punishment, as judgment. This gets us to that first discussion question, which I think is a good one to ponder. It says one of the first things we learn about Moses as an adult is that he kills and hides a body. He commits murder. And how does this fit with our childhood image of Moses? What might we learn from this part of Moses's life story? What do y'all think about? If we think about our childhood image of Moses, how does this square away with that? What might we learn from this and in our own lives? Any thoughts on that?
Well, my childhood image of Moses, we didn't know that he killed. I mean, that's not part of the story. Right. He's in a basket. He was rescued, and then he grows up, and then the next thing you know, he's at the burning bush.
Right.
I mean, that was my personal. So I never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when you're telling kids stories, you tend to skip over those parts, and perhaps for good reason, right? I'm not suggesting that's bad, but it is part of the story that we don't really hear as a child. You're right. The baby in the basket image really sticks with kids, right? They love that image, and then the burning bush. But the middle ground, midway, what gets us to the burning bush, you just sort of skip over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. For me, it's a reminder, and I don't know if this resonates with y'all, but it's a reminder. Moses, for whatever his intentions may have been, however noble, right? He still takes life. He still kills, and yet God is still able to use Moses for this plan to liberate the Hebrew children, liberate the Israelites. And God's like that with us. God still uses the twists and turns of our life to bring about God's will in the world. Yeah, Burton, you should be unmuted. Go ahead.
Is it the guy that Moses killed wasn't really innocent? It seems like that Moses was rescuing the innocent, and it happened to be his clan, his cousin, or one of his fellow Hebrews, and so.
It could be justified, right? And he's beating him, right? It could be justified. But even in the law, which Moses will give later, in the case of some sort of justified self-defense or killing, right? There's still retribution to be paid. So we don't know the details. But he does kill a man.
Well, it said, but he was beating a Israelite.
Right, a Hebrew, Hebrew slave. Yeah.
And I don't know that it's right to call Moses a murderer. Does the Bible call him a murderer?
Well, I don't know if the Bible calls him a murderer, but right, he kills. Now, and
Well, he did kill,
there are plenty
not
of,
all killing is murder.
well, I mean, you could make an argument that it's justified, right? But it's still, he's still committed. You know, it's, and there are other people in the Bible who do the same thing. Or think about King David, who commits murder.
Well, he did murder.
Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was.
yeah.
Yeah, that was murder. But Moses, I wouldn't call Moses a murderer. That's my.
Yeah, you don't have to, right? And the point is, I mean, it doesn't really matter in the end, right? God still uses Moses. Gail, yeah, go ahead. You should be unmuted.
So what did we call the killing of all the baby boys?
Yeah, I mean that's murder too, right? Yeah,
A bunch.
a bunch of murder. That's a murder of crows. You know, that's a crow of murder or something. You know, yeah, yeah.
Into a leader of his people, right?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Does this act not bring him into a type of leadership for his people?
Well, you know, if you look at the reaction of those two Hebrews the next day, right? It's not as if this has endeared him to them. There's still there's a good deal of mistrust there, right? Because this is in their eyes, he's an Egyptian. I mean, he's dressed like an Egyptian. He talks like an Egyptian and walks like an Egyptian because he grew up as an Egyptian. And so they're not immediately going to just embrace him. And in fact, as we'll see, when God sends him back to Egypt, and really for his entire life, there's almost an antagonistic relationship there. He has to kind of prove it, right? Yeah, go ahead, Burton.
But if it hadn't been for the story of him killing that guy, he never would have had to flee into the wilderness and had learned all the way of living in the desert.
Yeah.
And had the burning bush and then come back to rescue him.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a very important part of the story.
Right. And providence is at work in all of this, right? Providence is the will of God, God's hand. I mean, not only does Moses need to go and encounter the burning bush, right? But Moses needs to, but even before that, Moses needs to get out and learn a different way of life. Get into the wilderness. He's about to lead these people across the wilderness. He better learn how to live in the wilderness, you know. And of course, Moses doesn't know that at this point in the story. But that's how God's hand works. We don't always see what God is up to at this moment in the story. It's only in hindsight, years later, where we can see, oh, that was God. You know, how about that? Yeah. So Moses flees to meet Midian. Goes off into the desert. He meets his wife. They have kids. He works as a shepherd for Jethro, his father-in-law. And there are a lot of wonderful stories there that we could spend time on, but I'm resisting. So this is page 56. This is the burning bush, right? Here, Moses is called to be a leader, and his call it's to be a prophet. There is the way prophets are called when God calls a prophet. God calls a prophet for a specific purpose. You know, there's no like generalized prophet track. God tells you, you gotta do and say this. And what we see in every prophet, we call them call narratives, the story where God's calling them, is the person puts up resistance. You know, they say, no, God, not me. No, no, God, I don't know about that. And God answers all of those objections until finally they give in. And we see that happening here. So Moses is going through, he's with the flock, and remember, shepherds are really important and for the Hebrew people, right? This image of a shepherd. It's Moses. We'll get it with King David. Jesus, the good shepherd, right? And so he's going through this desert, being a good old shepherd, minding his own business. And it says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. In other words, it's on fire, but it's not burning up. You know, this is not how bushes are supposed to look when they're on fire. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight and why the bush is not burned up. I often wonder, what if Moses hadn't turned aside? What if Moses had been too busy? And just for me, one of the things I've been thinking about this week is, how many times does God put something in my path that he wants me to stop and look at, for like turn aside, and I just, I'm too busy for that today. Yeah. Not important enough. Now, if I saw a burning bush, maybe I would turn aside. I hope so. But something to chew on. And so Moses turns aside, he sees this bush, and God calls to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, here I am. God says, come no closer, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. So this connection, this observation, this reverence for this place. It's holy ground. God is speaking. God is abiding in this place. And God introduces himself. He says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And we have a note there that afraid is not exclusively how we understand it today, although that can be part of it. But the sense of fear is a mixture, it says, of dread and reverence for the divine. You know, when you're approaching the holiness of God, there is a due sense of fear and reverence there. Yeah. So then God goes on. He says, look, your kinsmen over in Egypt land, I'm hearing their cry because of the oppression of their taskmasters. I know they're suffering, and it's time to take them out of Egypt. I've come down to deliver them out of from the Egyptians, and to bring them to a land, a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey. This goes all the way back to that Abrahamic promise of a homeland, right? When God makes a promise, God doesn't forget the promise. It's taken generations to have this play out, but God doesn't forget the promise. God promised Abraham that he would bring him and his descendants to a good land that he would show them. God doesn't forget his promises. So he tells Moses probably the scariest words Moses has heard, taking you to Pharaoh. And Moses raises 5 objections. He pushes back against God 5 times, right? He says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, right? There's this, I'm a nobody. And God promises him, look, I'm going to be with you. And you're going to come back on this mountain with the people, worship me on this mountain. And then he says, but what am I supposed to tell the Israelites? If they say, who sent you? I don't know your name. And God says, well, you can tell them I am who I am sent you. And you see that point of interest, the Hebrew, share, is, there's difficulty translating it, right? I am that I am, I will be who I am what I will be. There are these tense problems, but we translate it, I am who I am that I am. So you'll say, look, I am the great I am, and notice those words are capitalized there. I am has sent me to you, the God of your ancestors. Now, in just as a note for us, in the Gospel of John, Jesus gives these I am sayings. I am the good shepherd. I am the gate. I am the way, the truth, the life. The reason that's so controversial is because Jesus is identifying himself with no one other than God. Using those words, I am, quite deliberately. And that's scandalous to his hearers, right? I am. So this is my name forever, my title for all generations. Today we often identify the word God, the name, but that's not actually the name of God in the Old Testament. The name of God in the Old Testament is Yahweh. God is more of a job description, I guess, if you will. But of course, our language is a little different. Yeah, Burton, you're unmuted. I can.
Yeah, we covered this in another study we did, but when Jesus was arrested, he said, who do you seek? And they told him, Jesus of Nazareth, and he said, I am, and they all fell backwards.
Right, yeah. And that's also in the Gospel of John, right? When Jesus is in the garden about to be arrested. They fall backwards because the power of that statement, it's Jesus is, he's not hiding who he is, right? He's saying, this is who you got. And and then they kind of have to collect themselves again and say, and Jesus has to ask them again, who you here to get? And they say, Jesus of Nazareth, and you should recognize that narrative from Good Friday. That's what we read every Good Friday. So, we go on and it's 6:40, but Moses continues to raise objections. God gives Moses some signs. He says, throw your staff on the ground, it turns into a snake. Put your hand into your cloak, it comes out leprous, right? These are the signs I'm going to give you to prove to Pharaoh and to the people who you are. I think it's also perhaps signs Moses needs to see. He's talking to a bush here. And he's probably pretty scared. And, God is saying, look, when I say I'm with you, I'm going to be with you. My power is really going to be with you. And then Moses comes up with his final objection. He says, I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor even now that you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. Saying he has a speech impediment. And so he asks God, why don't you send someone else? And he says that, oh my Lord, please send someone else, anyone else. And then God gets a little mad. So he says, I'll send your brother Aaron, the Levite. He's a good talker, talks right. So he'll speak for you. Now, sort of get on your way. It's time to go. I've called you. It's time to go. And this gets to that third discussion question about feeling good enough for God to call us. Moses here has raised objection after objection. He doesn't feel worthy. He doesn't feel up to the task. And sometimes we can be like that too. We can feel inadequate to the task, sort of, God, are you sure that this is what I need to do? Any thoughts on that? The question is, have you ever felt not good enough to serve God? How might God's response to Moses speak to us? I felt that way, right? We all have. Because the truth is, we're not good enough. I hate to burst our bubbles, but we're just not. Maybe not for the reasons we think, but God's grace is such that we don't have to depend on ourselves. We depend on God and God's mercies and God's graces. And if God sends us, God will be with us. Right? God will never break his promises to us, including that promise that he'll be with us. Yeah. So Moses goes off to Egypt. So this is a part of the story we know well. I really feel like I'm not doing justice to this, but in part it's because I know we all know this story pretty well. So Moses goes to Pharaoh, right? He says the people need to go out into the wilderness to worship God, to offer sacrifice. And Pharaoh says no. Aaron's with Moses, right? When they ask Pharaoh this, not only does Pharaoh say no, but he says, I'm going to make your kinsfolk work harder. I'm going to punish them for your sort of insolence. And so then God starts speaking through the plagues. The plagues, however you say that. And living through a plague, I think we perhaps all have a greater appreciation for this. So there are several plagues. The first two, Pharaoh's own magicians are able to replicate, which is interesting, right? They can't take the plague away, they just replicate it, meaning they just add to the misery. They're not fixing it, they're just adding to the misery, right? But after that, the magicians are not even able to copy the power of God. So we see that the water in the Nile is turned to blood, causing the fish to die, meaning the Egyptians have to dig wells in order to get water. We see frogs that cover the whole country. And those little green frogs that cover my back door all the time. And after each of the, Pharaoh says, all right, I'll let you go. It's fine. And the plague goes away. And Pharaoh changes his mind. No, never mind, And I think we can sometimes, when we see Pharaoh like this, we could say, oh, what an idiot. Right? But that happens to us too. How many times do we have to relearn the same lesson over and over again? We have gnats, we have flies, disease kills the livestock, boils cover the Egyptians, thunder and hail flatten the crops, locusts devour the plants and the trees, and finally, darkness so thick that it could be felt descended. And some rabbis have talked that this may be, and there's a name for this type of sandstorm, I'm not sure what it is, but a sandstorm coming in from the Sahara that blocks out the sun. I don't know, whether it's that or whether it's, just darkness that's really thick darkness. Over and over, see the same pattern. Plague, Pharaoh saying, it's fine, guys. We'll let you go. Just take the plague away. And then Pharaoh changing his mind. Yeah, Burton.
I think with the darkness, for sure, it says that it was not happening in Goshen,
Right.
where the Israelites lived. And I would think that the rest of the plagues did not happen there also.
Well, they had to put the blood on the doorknobs.
But on the last one, they had to put
Right.
the blood on the door because when they left, they still had all their livestock to go with them.
Yeah.
And they would have been, you
Yeah.
know, mainly killed.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, there's this separation, this barrier that God puts up, this protective barrier that keeps the Israelites from these punishments, right? And certainly, as we'll talk about with the final plague, which is the death of every firstborn male. You know, this is the Passover, right? And so we'll, in fact, we're there now. We have 15 minutes left, and this is really important. This is central, right? To and so we'll probably pick up here next week, but this is central to Israelite, like their religion, right? It's and in fact, right? Jesus, when Jesus is crucified, why is he in Jerusalem? Well, for the Passover, right? The Passover always happens around the same time as Easter, because it happened at the same time, right? So God says this one final play. Yeah, go ahead, Burton.
I just thought that it's interesting, just as God chose Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't anything Abraham did, and God chose his descendants, and they were, you know, I mean, we can see everybody's lives, and they weren't that up to snuff. And then God chose to bring the children of Israel out of Egypt. I mean, they prayed to him, but it was God that did it.
Right, God's choice.
And
Yes.
in the Passover, they remember that helplessness of themselves and how the Almighty did it for them.
Right.
And they're thankful, just like we look upon Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
is we're helpless and God did it for us.
Right.
And God chose us.
Right. Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. I mean, this is what they're remembering here is God's grace, right? Which is unearned and undeserved favor and mercy. There's nothing you can do to deserve God's grace. There's just not. And yet God gives it out. And for us, right, chiefly in the life of Jesus Christ and sending his son. Certainly not because we deserved it. In fact, the exact opposite. We didn't deserve it. So God gives Moses the instructions for the Passover. And it starts, this month shall mark for you the beginning of months, right? God is saying, we're going to reset time right here. This is the beginning. This is the foundation. First month of the year for you. Tell the whole congregation of Israel they are to take a lamb for each family, a lamb for each household. If a household is too small for a whole lamb, it joins its closest neighbor. The lamb shall be divided in proportion to the number of people. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a year-old male. Take it from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day. Slaughter it at twilight. Take some of the blood and put it on the doorposts and the lintel of the house in which they eat it. They shall eat the lamb the same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roast it over the fire. Don't let anything, no leftovers. And then this is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand, and eat it in a hurry. It is the Passover of the Lord. God is telling them, you're about to leave, so you need to be ready to go. I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both human beings and animals. On all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague shall destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So it is the blood of this lamb that is the mark for the people that they are to be spared, right? A lot of this should be resonating with us because of Jesus Christ, right? The Passover lamb, the Paschal lamb, whose blood is shed for us and marked on our hearts, right? If you will, the doorposts of our souls. Like I said, this is the central event for Judaism. Jesus is celebrating the Passover in Jerusalem when he dies. That's why he's there. So here we have a promise from God. Do as I, observe this command. Eat the lamb exactly how I tell you. Prepare it exactly how I tell you. Be ready to go. Do as I tell you. You're leaving tomorrow. If you follow these commandments, you'll come out. And this is a perpetual ordinance. In other words, it happens every year, right? It's a feast they keep every year. And somehow they believe that they participate mystically in that first Passover. That in the remembering, they are mystically participating in it. And again, take, eat, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. It's the same idea, this anamnesis, this remembrance and the mystical participation in it. Yeah. So every year at the Passover meal, the Jews remembered how God rescued them. They remember how God brought them out of the land of Egypt, and they tell the story. And each part of the meal is part of telling the story. And it's how they pass down that story of salvation from generation to generation. And in a sense, this is what we do in the Eucharist, right? Within the Eucharistic prayer is the story of salvation. I can't tell you, children who are Episcopalians learn this prayer very early. I remember I was youth leader in Springdale, and there was a girl there who's now, I think, in college, but she must have been around 12, maybe 10. And she was an acolyte, and she was standing off to the side in her little white robe, and they are the white alb, and the priest is celebrating the Eucharist, and this girl's over there in the corner shifting, from foot to foot. She has the rope in her hand and she's swinging it around. She's shifting from foot to foot. And I kind of got annoyed, right? Because of course I did. But I looked closer and I saw she was mouthing the words right along with the priest, right? She grew up as an Episcopalian. She knows those words. On the night in which he was betrayed, our Lord Jesus Christ took bread, right? She knew those words. They had an impression on her heart, even if she didn't really get it yet. She might not have gotten it yet, but her soul knew those words. And it's the same way for the Passover, right? You tell it to your kids year after year after year, and it burns itself on their souls. That's how we pass it down. So question 6, Well, I've been talking about it. It's connecting it to Jesus's story, and it brings out some more similarities. It says the Last Supper that Jesus shared with his disciples was a Passover meal. A branch of hyssop is used to feed Jesus sour wine when he's crucified, and the hyssop, right, is what you spread the blood with, the hyssop branch. And Jesus is referred to in John 1:29 as the Passover lamb by John the Baptist. The Lamb of God takes away the sins of the world. How might we understand those parts in the life of Jesus in light of this story? So, what are your thoughts? The connections between this and Jesus? Had you noticed these similarities before? Is this new to you? What do you think? Does it make sense? Am I just blathering on? Trains going by. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead, Burton. We can hear you.
They were supposed to take the lamb into their house and live with it as a pet. I forget how long, but it was.
That's till the 14th day of the month, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
At least a little bit. It's a year-old lamb, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the children all played with it, and then they slaughtered it, and it was innocent for the guilty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like, everybody loves the story of Jesus. And then you see him get killed and you realize it's innocent for the guilty.
Yeah. The supremely innocent, right? It's someone in whom there is no sin. And that's what that blemish is about, right? That no spot or blemish on the lamb. Someone in whom there is no sin, slain, right? Slain. Yeah. And that's when we want just like the Jews look to the Passover for their central salvation story. This is how God brought us out of the land of Egypt. This is how God brought us out of slavery and bondage into freedom, into the promised land. When we see Jesus Christ, that's what we think. That's what we should think too, right? This is how God acted. God himself acted to bring us out of bondage into sin, out of slavery to death and evil, out of slavery to the evil in this world, and brought us into grace, brought us into that wondrous light, and made us children of God. This is how that is accomplished. Yeah.
Into his kingdom.
Yeah.
From outside,
right.
From outside to inside.
Yeah.
And with a kingdom, there's a king.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that made me think. The Hebrew children recognize that this is the night of salvation, right? And they're about to go through the Red Sea, and we're going to talk about that next week. Hint, that's a prefigure for baptism, right? Going through the Red Sea. That's a little taste for next week. So they recognize this is the night, but they still have a whole wilderness to get through. They still have a whole bunch of time to learn what it means to follow God. And, that's the way it is for us too. As we'll talk about next week, when we're baptized, that's not the end of the story. We're marked, we're sealed, but we still have a lot of wilderness to get through before the end, right? Learning learning to walk with God, learning to live how God calls us to live. And that's not a pretty journey. We do that our entire lives. And sometimes it's not pretty. Sometimes we really fall down, like the children of Israel are going to really fall down. But God calls us to keep going, right? And it's called the wilderness of sin. So through the wilderness of sin. Well, this is fun. Did anyone watch The Prince of Egypt? I didn't get to.
I didn't get to either.
Well, it's so good. I think the music is fantastic. I just love the music. The wedding scene between Moses and Zipporah, where Jethro sings. That's just my favorite. But anyway, you're hearing it there. You can also this week you can watch the 10 Commandments, and I can't remember that actor's name. Molly would slap me for not remember, but yeah, you can watch that this week.
Charlton Heston.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. This is the central event, right? So there's so much around it. And I think it's important for us to see the parallels here between what's happening here and what's going to happen a few thousand years later with Jesus, because it's so connected, right? So connected. All of this for us is a prefigure, is a foreshadowing of what is to come, right? The promise of Christ. So hang on.
Hey, and maybe 2,000 years after Jesus came, that's when he might come back. You know, that's pretty close. Get up to his ascension.
Yeah.
You know, maybe 2035.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not going to bet money on it.
Not at all.
It could happen any day, right? I mean, that's what we're told. Just like those.
We know when. It says in the hour you think not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah,
That's
whenever you're not expecting it. You know, just like those Hebrew children who were told to eat the meal with the staff in their hand and their loins girded. And loins girded means your robes prepared in such a way that you can walk or run, right? Like, it's hard to walk in a robe, so you tie them up, and there's a whole. You can go on YouTube and see how that's done. But we're called to be ready in the same way, right? Staff in your hand, loins girded, eyes to the eastern skies, getting ready to go. Because in the hour you think not. That's yeah. And we're going to be hearing a lot about that, by the way, because from now until Christmas, that's kind of the theme. The second coming. So that's the theme of the church here. All right, it's 7:02, y'all. We made it through the chapter, and we only did it because I didn't slow down.
That's good. Excellent.
Yes.
Good job. Right, Gail.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see y'all. It is so good to see my dog's breaking in now to tell me it's time. It's time to go. I'll tell you a brief story. I've been working in our back garden. I have a flower bed, and I planted some cabbage because it's pretty and I like to eat cabbage, And I have 4 little cabbage plants, and she's already, Fancy, don't do it. That's not your food. She's already torn one out of the ground and eaten it all. She seems okay, so Anyway, it's good to see y'all. It's good to see y'all.
You too. Thank you.
Have a great week.
Yeah, y'all take care, and I will see you next week for the Exodus.
Okay. Thank you.
God bless y'all.
Bless.